Welcome, everyone. I'm back at you with another episode. On today's episode, I interview a certified professional fitness trainer with over 25 years experience. He's coached some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry, from Grammy award-winning recording artists to A-list Hollywood actors to NFL and motocross athletes. He's also a certified nutritionist, a certified black belt instructor, and trains in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, and boxing. And now he's written a book called Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer: The Journey That Changed My Life and the Lessons I've Learned That Can Change Yours, about his hero's journey thus far at the feet of the greatest teacher of all, and that's life. It's now available on both Amazon and the audiobook form on Audible. Welcome to the winner circle, John Petrelli.
Thank you, Derek. Good, man. That was a mouthful you had there. Sorry you had to read all that. I'm glad you did.
Well, it just gives a little snapshot to our listeners on the man you are. And these first few questions will really introduce that. But before we get into those, as I mentioned, the goal with these conversations is really uplift, inspire, and empower everyone tuning in to move forward with greater faith in themselves on the hero's journey ahead. And it's a very positive conversation we're about to have, that we are having now. And the first questions opens it up as such. And that is, John, what do you love about your world right now? Not about the world out there, but what do you love about your internal world at this moment?
Oh, that's a great question. So I would have to say is all the things that have comprised my past have made me the fabric of who I am right now. So I loved all the highs, the lows, what we may consider in the moment as bad, but ends up being part of who I am. And I can't change any of that. And I wouldn't want to change any of that. I've had some things that people may look at me and say is horrendous, or, it was bad luck. But at the end, I've accepted it and it's good luck. And I love that I'm in a place right now that I can go, no matter what happens, I don't really need to judge it. It's all there to teach me a lesson. And it took me many years to get to this place, but I'm happy about it. I have a wonderful family. I love my kids, my wife. I feel blessed about what I do, which is help people every day. I wake up inspired to help people on their journey of health, fitness, evolving. And I found one thing that I absolutely love is that they teach me as much as I teach them.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, John. Another
Sure.
question I like to ask everyone as we get to know them is their mission, their personal mission here in this reality, not your mission as a father or a husband, as an author, as a coach, but the thing that is interwoven amongst all those roles. So what is your overall mission here?
I think it comes down to one word, brother. It comes down to help. I want to help people. I want to assist them in any way I can. That's my mission, whether I'm training people, whether I'm trying to teach my son a lesson, from things that I've learned in the past, but still allowing him to fail and have his own experiences as an individual. I just want to help. And I found that in my life, Derek, the more that I've taken the focus, the spotlight off of me and what my selfish agenda may be, but just selfishly trying to help people in whatever capacity that may be, the happier I am. And that's where I found that I've really gravitated towards. And the things that get me up at 3:30 in the morning, the things that get me up at 4 o'clock in the morning is that common thread that I just want to help.
Being of service.
Yeah.
What are the ways that you love to be of service? How are you currently helping people?
Wow. I'll tell you, one of the simplest ways, but can be, simple to do, but maybe hard to grasp sometimes, is listen. Just to be an ear and listen. Sometimes people just need someone to be a sounding board. Whether that's a family member, whether that's a client, whether that's somebody you don't know. We don't know what lies inside someone that we are coming in contact with. And we may define that interaction as being negative or positive, depending on how they come off, but we don't know their history. And sometimes people just need someone to listen to them. And that's a great way I love to be of service. In whether it's creating a book or doing something, or you and I are both teachers, we have some common threads in martial arts and jiu-jitsu. We're always kind of putting out information. but that information is also coming back, right? And the way people absorb it and the way that your communication is being delineated by them and absorbed and what they're bringing back to you. So we got to always make sure for me that my ears are open and, you know, that giving and receiving is happening at the same time, right? We spoke a little bit off camera and you were telling me, and I was so, yeah, I'm so interested on your journey, and you so eloquently put, you know, the yin and the yang of it. So that one way is something that took me a while to kind of grasp. I'm still working on it, but just listening and looking for cues and clues of how we can possibly be of help, of assistance to people.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah,
So
brother.
this podcast is called Welcome to the Winner Circle. And to me, being a winner is embracing the process. We live in a very destination-oriented world. When I get this job, when I get this career, when I get this amount of sales, when I get this, I'll be happy. And when we get there, maybe there's a temporary dopamine spike, a temporary feel good. And then it's a now what? And that's because we've been missing the sweetness of the song, and that's the process. And to me, being a winner is just stepping forward in the present. And it doesn't need to be a big step. It could be something as simple as standing a little taller, taking a deeper breath, being a little bit more mindful, being present. And those small shifts will take us a far way. We don't need to do huge things, just really embracing that process. And that's what being a winner means to me. What does being a winner mean to you, John?
Wow, I think, you know, a lot of what you just said encapsulates how I feel, like being in the moment, enjoying. We can be in this materialistic world where we're looking for that next achievement. I'm a very type A personality, right? I'm always, I've trying to learn, Derek, to enjoy the moment and to enjoy the fruits of some of my labor. And I'm always looking for that next thing in growth. I'm always looking for, you know, how do I take that next step? And sometimes my wife keeps me in balance and is like, you need to take a deep breath and enjoy this moment of what you've done. So I don't know if that's inherently in my DNA or something from my, you know, growing up from my parents. But one thing that I really find is important that we need to do is help as many people along the way on our journey, whatever that journey may be, right? And start forming a team around you, not necessarily a team that's going to always agree with what you're doing, but listening to other points of view. Listen to other people that may not necessarily agree with your opinion. Your opinion may or may not shift, but you may pick up some nuggets along the way that may, you know, really shape your opinion down the road. I really feel like I don't know everything. I really feel like sometimes I don't know anything. And I just want to be an open cup to listen to information, to take information in, and to form a new me tomorrow. Like if I'm the same, if you and I were to have this conversation, Derek, again a month from now, and I'm the same person, then really, what has happened? What have I done in the last 30 days? What have I acquired? So I need to be open to continually evolving and to understand that things that I may see as true today, that my truth may shift tomorrow. And I think, you know, I don't want to put my ideology on the world, but I think it's something that we can all gravitate towards. Like, what can someone teach me? What can I help them with? And how can I learn new things to maybe change my perspective on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. And really seeing the beautiful opportunity in the fact that, and at least for me, the more I know, the less I know. I realize the less I know. And what an opportunity, like that lights my curiosity, that lights my fire. And it's a simple mind shift. But yeah, I find that's very interesting. So we were talking about how both our journeys have been impacted by near-death experiences. And I feel the universe is always guiding us to what you just spoke about, but sometimes we don't listen. And when we don't listen, the voice gets louder and louder and louder. And sometimes we need to get smacked, whether that be with an illness, a pool ball like that came upside my head, or who knows what, a car accident, a death. Something will shake us if we don't listen. So what was that for you? What was your near-death experience, and what did you learn from that after?
Great. Derek, there's quite a few, and I think I'm going to go way back to when I was 18 or 19, because maybe someone that's in that point right now that may be in a dark place can hear this and relate to it. So it wasn't a near-death experience for me, unfortunately, and it was a near-death experience for somebody else at my hands. When I was 18 years old, we had just graduated high school. A lot of my friends had a better path than I did. I had a little bit of a troubled childhood in the sense I had a mother that loved me. I had a father that definitely loved me too, but because of the era he grew up in and his background, he wasn't able to necessarily communicate that with me. And we can only use the tools that we're given. My dad was born during the Depression in 1921. He served in 3 wars. He was in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And the military served as his father, really. He didn't have a father. So what he learned to communicate was different than, what some people may consider loving and caring. And I didn't know how to take that as a child. And so it harbored fear, and then that fear harbored anger. And a lot of things from my anger, unfortunately, spilled out into physical confrontations. So an absolute moment that smacked me in the face because I wouldn't listen is exactly as you articulated it. I had things whispering at me first, then I had things yelling at me. In Italian, we have this term called testa dura, which means hard head. I've been accused of that many times, and I think it's absolutely true. But I was in a confrontation. We had all graduated high school. We were getting ready to go off to college, and an incident happened, and a friend of mine was about ready to be in a fight. And I stepped in to intervene. And unfortunately, I took in a split second, I kicked someone in the face. And that person fell to the ground. Their head split open. And there was a chance they may have died. There was a chance that they could have died. Okay. I'm going to try not to get too emotional here, but that changed my life. As I sat there, I ended up, there was a situation where undercover police officers saw what happened. And I thought somebody else was grabbing me from behind that was part of the confrontation. And I got into an altercation with an undercover cop. I got slammed to the ground. I had handcuffs put on me. I got locked up. And that was something where I couldn't, at that point in my life, I could not listen to the cues that were already happening. And I had to have that bottom happen to me, where unfortunately somebody else suffered for that. And I've asked for forgiveness many times over, but that was my bottom, where I started making a change in my life and saying the outside, my physicality did not match my internal mentality. And it was creating a conflict between my ears. And it was also creating a conflict in physical that spilled over into the streets in violence. And so while I sat in that back of that police car with handcuffs on, and I watched that individual first try to be revived by the police officers, then try to revive him by the fire department, and then finally the ambulance, I selfishly thought of my own life in those moments. And man, I could go to jail for life here. This is a turning point in my life. And I had thought as a youth, man, and looking back as an adult, how our thoughts become actions. But I had thought for a long time, with a life surrounded by violence, that I was either going to end up dead or in jail. And I was meeting those expectations of what my mentality was as I sat there, my hands throbbing with handcuffs locked on them, and going, I knew this was going to happen. I knew I'd end up in jail. I knew I'd end up. And thankfully, that person didn't end up dying. I ended up working my way through the legal system. And I ended up making a pact with myself that I was going to change, number one, my mentality. I was going to change my geography, and I was going to change my peer group. And I'm not blaming my peer group at all. It was not their fault that I acted out in that way. But I understood that I was not in a place mentally or mature enough to handle the dynamic of what my friend's group was and not act out in a negative way. So after that, I wish I could tell you, as I said, that it changed immediately, but that was the hard stop where it really started going into that 180-degree turn. And I started evolving, and I started seeking more. I started seeking the presence of people that can help me. and the universe, God, whatever people believe, started presenting these things in my life. I started having individuals that took interest in me, could see that underneath a rough exterior, there was a soft core that needed to be nurtured. And I started getting opportunities to change my life.
That's beautiful. I don't know where to go from here, but let's go to martial arts. What role did martial arts play in this transformation? Was it martial arts already there? You said you did kick this guy in the face, so maybe you already had martial arts background, but maybe, yeah, let's talk about martial arts, how that came into your life, and then how that helped transform you on your journey and in your.
So it's a great question, Derek. So I got into martial arts before this. I was a little kid with a big mouth, and I wrote some checks that my butt couldn't cash. And I dealt with bullies and whatnot. And some of it was because of my hands for having a wise mouth, and some of it was just, neighborhood stuff. But I started training in martial arts when I was about 12, and I started with Taekwondo. And I had this utter passion for wanting to be able to defend myself. And also, even at a very early age, I wanted to be able to come to and present myself as a protector of people that couldn't defend themselves. Like, I would see situations, whether it was a schoolyard fight or something, and I wanted to have the ability to step in and help someone, but I was feeble in what my abilities were, and I didn't have that ability to help anybody other than just verbally. So I got into martial arts at 12. I started in Taekwondo, as many kids do, and then I graduated into different forms of karate. And at 18, I ended up getting my black belt under Ron Van Cleef, who was the oldest guy to ever compete in the UFC. He fought Hoist. And so I ended up getting my black belt under him. And a guy, also an organization, I got my black belt under Bill Superfoot Wallace. And so at 18, after like 6 or 7 years of training, 18 or 19 I ended up getting my black belt. So, as a martial artist, that there is more than physicality to it, right? We are supposed to hopefully emulate things of being a protector, of taking care of people that are less fortunate or less physically capable that we are, of having honor, of having dignity. So here I am at 18, 19 years old, getting my black belt, and my external world, once again, is not matching what I know should be happening in my heart, in my soul, in my mind. And so I had this internal conflict also going, okay, where's your honor? Where are things that you're supposed to be emulating as a martial artist? And now that you know how to defend yourself, now that you know how to fight, why are you not following through with this? And so there was, that was a huge point. And my two things didn't match, right? My physicality, what I'd learned, what I'd studied, what I'm supposed to be gravitating towards, and how I'm acting. Yeah. So, and then from there in martial arts, probably in my mid-20s, I got my first taste of, I better learn how to fight on the ground. And I got introduced to jiu-jitsu, and I had another awakening. I had another epiphany of there's a lot more to this that I haven't learned. And I started training in jiu-jitsu. I'm training Krav Maga, and I ultimately found my way through different jiu-jitsu schools, which I picked up different things from, but I found my home with Hiran and Heather Gracie at Gracie Academy. And I studied with them until I got my purple belt. And then I moved away geographically where I couldn't train with them anymore. And then I got my brown belt in jiu-jitsu underneath Matt Amorosa, who is a black belt underneath Fabio Santos. And I keep trying to, grow and learn every day. It's something that, you probably feel the same, that it's just, you can never stop learning. It's something you can take with you your whole life, right?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like when I got my black belt, it's like I just began anew as a white belt,
Right.
It was wild. So when did a trainer enter into this equation? So you started martial arts when you were young, and it evolved as you evolved. And when did your training career begin?
Sure. So in this whole time, Derek, I was 4'11" as a freshman in high school. and all these kids were towering around me. And I started finding out that I didn't have the physicality to make it in sports anymore. I wasn't making the teams, basketball, football, all these things. I couldn't compete anymore. A lot of kids had gone through puberty earlier than I did, and I was, very late in that. And so I started weight training myself in addition to doing martial arts and trying to get bigger, faster, stronger, all those things that, I thought would make me look different in people's eyes. And so by the time I was 18, I had grown a ton. But I was skinny. And so I started really getting into it. I started competing in bodybuilding shows at 18 years old. And from there, I found how good it felt to release, the tension, the emotion in the gym. It was a positive place to put my energy into. And I get into a little bit of this in my book about how it was also a safe harbor to come off of the streets. And it was an excuse for me to tell people I can't go to that party or I can't go to this. And I started just becoming a monk and going to the gym and dedicating so many hours to that. Well, I get to college and I lo and behold, all the trouble I got into, I studied criminal justice of all things. And I said, I love this. And maybe in another life, I would be a rescuer, like a fireman or a police officer. But I wanted to be a positive thing in people's lives. And I remember, I have a lot of crazy stories, Derek, so I know I'm jumping around and everything. But in college, I also caught shoplifters as a loss prevention detective. And I saw when I would catch people for shoplifting, the police officers would sometimes have to come. And I felt like police weren't always a positive thing in people's lives. Like sometimes they were not happy to see the police officer. I'm like, if I'm a trainer and I help people, they should almost always be happy to see me. Like I could be a positive point at all points. So a person at all points. So I moved to California. I got out of my environment at 21 years old. One of the people that positively influenced my life was this guy named James Treen. And he offered me a place to stay in California. I slept on his floor. I had nowhere to go. And I started studying to be a trainer. And back in like we're going way back. You can see I have gray hairs, dude. We go way back. It's like 1993, 94. I found, we didn't have internet. And I found American Council on Exercise, which I thought maybe one of the very few certifications back then. And I studied my butt off. And I went to San Diego State University and I took like this 3-hour test to be a trainer. And I got my first certification way back then. And I got my first certification to be a trainer from American Council on Exercise. And then super old school, I found a little studio that was just for trainers and clients. And I started paying kids to pass out flyers. And instantly, people started calling me. And I didn't have answers. Like I didn't know how much I was going to charge. I didn't know. And I was 21 years old. And Derek, started changing my voice when they would call because I wanted to sound older on the phone because I wanted them to think I had some type of authority. And I started answering the phone in a deeper voice and thinking about like, what would I charge? And it just snowballed from there. And before you know it, I had one client at $12 an hour. And then I had a client for 15, and then it grew. And before you knew it, I was a full-time trainer. And I was doing 40 hours a week, just doing private sessions. And the people that initially and throughout, the people that I worked with changed my life as much as I've changed theirs. And I rambled on for so long, Derek, I forgot the question you asked me, brother.
No, that's incredible. And we could just continue on that thread. So then you trained people for over 25 years, almost 30 years now. And that has taken many evolutions. And so many lessons and learnings taught and learned in that, and so much learned from your clients. What did you learn from this time working with people? The most effective way to be of service as a coach?
Yeah, that's great. I've learned that we all have different histories. I don't know what that person's history is walking through that threshold to come and see me in the gym, the garage, or wherever I'm going to see them. And so how do I help them navigate this desire to be healthier? How do I help them navigate this desire to maybe eat healthier? What are their aspirations and what is their through line, right? How do I take, whether that is, I'm going to get married in 6 months and I want to look better in my wedding dress, or I'm a professional athlete and I have X, Y, and Z a year from now, or I'm going to go into the combine, or I'm just a housewife that wants to feel better. How do I connect that emotional thread into their life and then weave it into this physical action? So they don't look at it as, I got to get up at 6 a.m. to do this stupid treadmill, but I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. because my daughter's getting married 6 months from now. And I want to feel good and dance with my husband at that wedding. And I try my best as a trainer to weave that line of emotion into their action. So that action becomes easier and easier to do on a long term. Mm-hmm. So we're not only just doing sit-ups here or whatever the action may be, plyometrics, we're doing it because this is what you want to achieve down the road.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes. And another really unique thing that you're known for is merging the functional fitness with martial arts. Tell us about that.
Sure. I feel like so much of our population will benefit from martial arts in many different aspects. The fact that you start feeling comfortable in uncomfortable positions, the fact that you're learning something new, the fact that you, God forbid, have a situation, you have a talent that can maybe help you and help other people survive a situation, so empowering. And so I said, I had clients that would come in and they would want to, just do weight training or just do cardiovascular. They had this perception about what they wanted to do. And I would selfishly start threading in different martial arts. And I found that the reception from the people was so great that it lets time go by faster because we're doing something physically and mentally active. We're not just staring at seconds going back by on a treadmill or a bike. And they started getting empowered. And when I initially started putting this out there as a test, pretty soon, more and more people were going, can we do that again? Can we hit the focus mitts? Can you show me how to escape that thing where you were on top of me and you were, holding me down? Can you show me, what we know is a mount escape or a choke escape? And it just started snowballing. And I would see people be in physical distress with a smile on their face and going, this is fun. How do I continue to do this? Even though it's physically taxing, man, I enjoy this. So I started, Derek, weaving it in for clients that are 80 years old, for kids that are in their teens or preteens, for parents that their daughters are going away to college and going, hey, we're going to definitely sweat here. We're going to expend some calories, but you're also going to walk back out that threshold with something in your tool belt that you didn't have before. And this something that you're going to have is so empowering. I think you're going to like it. So if you take a little leap of faith and trust me on this, we'll start with just 5 minutes. And if you don't like it, we won't have to do it again. But I don't think I've had one person that hasn't gone beyond that 5 minutes and wanted to do it continually.
Mm-hmm. As I hear you talk about that, like what really comes to me is you're giving them permission to play. And I think we lose that in our society as we age, just playing. And I think that's something that martial arts really allows a vehicle for, is just to be free in your movement and just to explore the unconventional. And that's kind of get really good at shaking us loose of the rigid world. We're told to sit here, do this, obey, follow this path. And yeah, I think that play is what really people enjoy from the martial arts and the combination that you give them.
I agree. It allows us to be silly, right? Sometimes too.
And fail.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but that's so important, right? That if we're not doing that, if we're not being playful, if we're not failing, if we're not being silly, then we're kind of missing some of the keys, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like those are so important to allow yourself the freedom to do that.
Oh yeah. Just like we put in the reps for bicep curls to build bigger biceps or shoulder presses for bigger shoulders. We could also put in the reps for being playful, for being joyful, for being loving. It all works the same.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite places to be, it's a little bit of a jump, but I think we'll make this connection. I love, Derek, going to weddings because it is a place where people, they're surrounded usually by other people that they feel safe with, they feel comfortable with, family, friends, and then they let their guard down. And at the end of the night, I love watching from little kids that can barely walk dancing to people that may have not danced in 30 years. They may be 80, 90 years old. And we have this playfulness of dancing, of freedom, of just having fun. And I love weddings for that. And that's what I think, if we integrate that more in just our everyday, come on, how much happier. You tell me, how many people have you seen dancing that aren't smiling, right? There's not many mean mugging dancers. And that is one of the things you brought awareness to me right now, is why I love weaving martial arts into people's programs. It's playful, it's silly, it's great, it's protective, it's all these things rolled up.
It's taking off those layers, that armor that we've accumulated on us on our journeys because of fear, fear is a real factor in the lives we all live. And that's kind of what I want to talk about next. What role has fear played in your life, and how have you transmuted it into being an ally?
Oh, it's great. So initially in my early part of my life, in my early part of my journey, you heard that fear resulted in anger, and anger resulted in violence. And I had to go past that, right? That's not a life to live. I was not happy with myself, and my surroundings showed all of that, and my internal conflict was always going on. And so I don't know if fear has left my life in any capacity, but what fear means to me has left my life, right? So I see things that may make me fearful now, I look at it more as excitement, right? And I want to be a little scared sometimes. I want to have a little bit of fear in my life. And it doesn't mean I have to lash out in violence. There's a lesson that's probably going to be on the other side of that fear that I'm excited to go on the journey with. I'm excited to experience. So for me, fear has gone from anger, I got to burst in and fight or flight, and I'm going to fight, to going, okay, I'm a little fearful to talk to Derek today. I don't know where this video is going to go, but also, how do I just redefine that fear and go, there's a great journey here. There's some excitement here. I'm going to learn something. Maybe I get a few bumps and bruises, but at the end of it, I think there's something beautiful that can be created from this. And so I just have a whole different relationship with that fear, and actually inviting it in sometimes. Yeah, it excites me now.
Yeah, let's examine your relationship with fear in pertinence to your book. You've been this renowned trainer for all these years, and then struck with the calling to write a book. And I don't know, I'm making assumption here, and that's never good to do, but I assume that there was a bit of a fear there of voicing, why does anyone want to read my stuff, or that self-doubt. So let's examine that. Let's put the magnifying lens there.
Yeah. So when I was laying in a hospital is when I got the inspiration to really finalize and do this book. I was laying in a hospital. My physicality had diminished down to nothing. And it was it defined me for many years, my physicality. And when I had to start using my mentality, I'm like, how do I turn this into something positive? And I really got the inspiration I had started writing the book ahead of time, and writing just chapters and things, and trying not to judge what I was writing, just writing down life experiences. And when I was in there, I said, okay, I need to follow through with this. I can see that it's probably going to be a while before I get my physicality back. And when I got discharged in a wheelchair from the hospital, then I graduated to a walker, then I graduated to a cane and physical therapy every day. I said, this is the time to do it. But in that process, I had a definitive switch to say, this is the time to do it. But I would be less than honest if there wasn't many times where I go, why would anybody want to read this? Where is my ego that big that I get off that I can put this out there and somebody would be interested in this story? And so I had those words come into my head, but I always had to go back to my through line for me was, if I help one person with something I say in here, one person, then I've done my job. And in addition to helping that one person and maybe helping them heal in some way or finding a path to healing, I'm also started finding that it was helping me heal. It was helping me regurgitate things that had been harbored in shame in my life that I was afraid and fearful to verbalize, because how would people judge me when they heard this, when they didn't know? They know me as this trainer now, but I haven't always been this person. It was an evolution. And so I had fear of people knowing, okay, this is the same guy that made mistakes at 18. This is the same guy that made mistakes at 20. This is the same guy that made mistakes at 25. Some things I'm embarrassed about. So I had to look at fear and go, okay, the overall good of potentially helping one person has to circumvent and surpass the fear that I have inside of people knowing about me. And that was my driving force to become brave enough to do that. And it didn't happen once, it didn't happen twice, it happened many times. It still comes in my life today, of these things that come in our head of whether we're good enough, not good enough, are we enough? Are we being too egotistical to do these things? That voice in your head. And for me, if I can use, am I helping somebody with this as a bellwether? It helps pull me through that storm of what's going on.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let's examine what brought you into that hospital, what got you into that situation, and what did you learn about no longer being able to rely on your identity as an athlete, and how that transformed you, losing that capability for a period?
Yeah. So for good or for bad, part of who I have been has been working my butt off, being tough, maybe not even showing as much emotion earlier in my life. And so I love my job and I love showing up every day. And it's very easy for me to not put a throttle on it, work 16, 17-hour days I've done before. I did 6 months in a row before without a day off, without one day off. And we know, right, sitting here, that's not healthy. That's not being complete. I can only give so much before I run out. And if I'm not filling my cup back up, how can I give to other people? How can I be of service? So I've had to learn that the hard way. My wife has really kept me in balance with that. Still learning, Derek. And so I ended up getting COVID in 2021, and my family got it first. My kids, it was like a blip on the radar screen. My wife, it was kind of nothing. My kids basically had sniffles. So I got it. And the thing that was toughest about COVID was I had to quarantine. So my mind is so active, and I have been working on just being in peace and in non-activity, right? Just allowing my mind to be at ease, to meditate, to incorporate yoga, all these things, breath work, have started coming into my life. But I need work still in that area, right? I'm still evolving in that area. So in that quarantine, I immediately, when I found out I had COVID, I'm in the gym doing the assault bike for a half hour. I'm going crazy lifting and doing everything. Well, the universe was knocking, but I wasn't listening. And now what should have been a blip on the radar, I ended up getting COVID pretty bad, 10 times worse than the rest of my family. After I recovered from COVID, I had a little bit of lingering effects. And I don't know if the Guillain-Barré syndrome came from COVID, but it also could have come from a bacterial infection I had. In jiu-jitsu, I had someone cut my shin with their toenail and it got infected. I got cellulitis right at that time too. So it's likely that either COVID or the bacterial infection sparked this GBS, Guillain-Barré syndrome. My feet started going numb, and I didn't listen to the knock on the door. I was just like, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to work through this. I'm working 10, 12, 14-hour days. Well, then my shins started going numb and my fingers started going numb. And I don't say anything to anybody. I just keep going to work. I don't say anything to my wife. Then I find out I can't pee. Like, I'm trying to urinate and I can't pee. You would think that would have me tell my wife, okay, I can't feel my feet right now. I can't feel my hands. I can't urinate, but I keep going. So I wake up one morning and my vision starts getting blurred. And okay, I sit down, it's 4 o'clock in the morning before everybody else gets up, and I have a conversation with myself. And I said, okay, I need to start being honest with myself. I need to start being honest with my wife. And I tell my wife what's going on. And I tell her, I said, once I get home from work today, we'll go to the doctor. And she's like, once you get home from work today, you can't feel your feet. What the hell are you talking about? You can't pee. So she convinces me to take the day off from work, and we go to urgent care. And we go into urgent care and we're relaying what's going on. And we're blessed with some very good doctors. I end up fainting in the urgent care. And I had fainted once or twice before that too, and kind of kept it to myself. And so they did some tests and they said, you know what, we don't want to scare you, but we think you may have a rare autoimmune disease, and we don't have the ability to test for it here. We highly recommend that you immediately go to this hospital down the street, and you're going to check into the emergency room, and we're going to send all this information over, and we're going to make sure that they understand what we believe you have. And so they thought I might have had MS or Guillain-Barré syndrome. So we go a mile down the street, we go to the hospital, they check me in. At that point, I can't feel, like, if you take a hammer and hit my patellar tendon to get a reaction, I have no more reaction. I can't really feel my legs, I can't feel my feet, and I'm getting weaker by the moment. It's like a battery that is getting drained. If you shake my hand, I can at this point probably barely squeeze your hand. So we get into the emergency room. They do some evaluations and they say, we want to put you in for a spinal tap to pull fluid from your spine and test if you have this protein for this autoimmune disorder. So they take me in, they do a spinal tap. They said it's going to take a while for the lab to come back. I live about a mile from the hospital. They said, you can stay here in the hospital or you can go home. Okay, we're going to get the test from this. If you go home and you start losing feeling, because right now I can't feel anything from my knees below, my hands, I can't feel. If it starts ascending up your body, you need to come back in immediately. When we get home, I'm home for 20 minutes and we have to do a U-turn. My legs start going numb. So it is happening just as they predicted it may happen. So we go back into the hospital. Around that time, the test hadn't come back in yet. They check me into the ICU to be safe, because if it is what they think it is and it ascends to my lungs and heart, I have to go on a ventilator. Mm-hmm. So they check me in the ICU. At that point, my body is like shutting down. I can barely start moving my arms. I can barely start moving my neck, and my mind is like racing. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? They put me in the ICU and the tests come back and they say they haven't narrowed down that I either had Guillain-Barré syndrome or MS, but I definitely have one of these two. They run some further tests. And by the next day, my friend, when the doctor comes in and checks my reflexes and asks me to squeeze her hand, I don't even have the strength to raise my hand and squeeze her hand. The tests come back and I have Guillain-Barré syndrome. And I lay in bed there. They end up giving me a thing called IVIG. It's immunoglobulin. And in Guillain-Barré syndrome, your nervous system believes that there is a foreign entity in your system, and it starts attacking the myelin on your nerves, the sheath that covers your nerves. And so my own nervous system or my own immune system is attacking the myelin and making me weaker and weaker. So that was what happened there. And in that process, I know I'm going on long here. Please cut in at any time. People may think that this is crazy, but I very quickly came to a peace with the fact that I didn't have my physicality and that I was going to use my mentality to navigate my way through this somehow. I immediately asked my wife we needed to start playing positive music in my room. So I started, I'm going to name drop a little bit here, but Ziggy Marley's my client for 20 years. And I love Bob Marley music. I love Ziggy music. And I said, we're going to play that until they tell me I have to shut it off. So I started filling the room with that. And then say again.
Filling the room with positive vibration.
Yes, brother. Yes. I started feeling those positive vibrations. My wife immediately started going home and making me pureed organic food, organic vegetables, because I couldn't swallow any longer. And I wasn't going to be eating pureed French fries. So my wife, God bless her soul, went home and started doing that and bringing me food. And then I started meditating and praying. And whether this had an effect or not, I don't care. I don't know how to quantify it. But I started envisioning my body's immune system stopping and relaxing. And I started asking it and praying for it to relax. And I started praying harder for it to relax. And I started meditating on it. And I started envisioning what my immune system looked like and what my nerves were like and trying to ask them to stop. And then it went on to me commanding my immune system to stop. Now, whether that had any effect or not, I don't know how we quantify that. But what it did is it kept my mind in a positive state where I was never, woe is me. I was never going, why is this happening to me? I was searching actively for a potential solution to do what I could in what I had. And I said, if I can only move my finger, which at one point, that's all I could do. I said, I'm going to move this finger. And I'm going to be grateful for moving this finger. And I'm not going to complain that I can't move my other finger. And when I can move my second finger, I'll be grateful for that. Because I was fully aware that there were people surrounding me in that ICU in different rooms that couldn't do that. And I was grateful for the little bit that I had and continually staying positive to know that I would do all I can with my mentality to regain my physicality.
And an outlook that this was all happening for you.
Say that again.
An outlook and a mindset that this was all happening for you versus to you. It was happening
exactly.
for you. There's a greater reason for this than, it wasn't happening to you, it's happening for you. And I think that's really helped with the shift and the transformation and the healing.
It's been a blessing because you know what? The book I wrote because of this would not have happened. Who I am right now, you and I probably wouldn't be sitting down, right? And so it was a blessing that it happened to me. And there's no other way I can look at it. I'm a better person because it happened to me, because I went through that journey of that. I've had several people that I have no connection with. It's 4, 5, 6 degrees separation where they heard about what happened to me and asked if I can speak with them. Their mother has Guillain-Barré syndrome, or their daughter had it. Their aunt had it, is going through it right now. And I've spent hours speaking to people that I would have never had a connection with and giving them some of my journey, giving them some tips that may have helped me and may help them has been an absolute blessing.
And you'll be able to share that message even further with this new book that you wrote with Scott Burr. How did you connect with Scott, and how did that, what was that process look like from writing this book to getting it published, to get it on Amazon, on Audible? Talk us through being a first-time author like that.
Yeah, buddy. So this right here, here's my book. I don't know if you can see it. It started off as being doodles on a paper. It started off as being just entries on my laptop. and I was on tour before all this happened with my autoimmune disease. And I was like, how do I spend my time positively on all these flights? I was on 100, 120 flights a year. And I said, I can just mindlessly watch some TV, or I can start trying to create something. So I started writing down my life experiences, hoping that someday it could help someone else. But it hadn't progressed past that. And when I got out of the hospital, I love listening to podcasts. I love listening to audiobooks. And a mutual friend of ours, Richard Bressler and Scott Burr, had put together a book. So while I was incapacitated, I started listening to that book. And I know Richard, but I didn't know so much of his life. And it really inspired me, and it warmed my heart that he was brave enough to share so much. And it was just interesting. And his bravery in putting out that book gave me some courage. And I reached out to Richard and I said, number one, I love your book. I love that you shared this. Is so interesting. How did you do it? And in that conversation, Scott's name came up. And so I asked Richard for that information. He probably checked with Scott first and said, I have this crazy guy that wants to contact you, that thinks he can write this book or whatever. So I ultimately got Scott's contact info. We had a few conversations. He asked me to send him some stuff, and he was, I don't want to speak for Scott, but I think in my memory's a little jacked up, but he was pretty tired after doing Richard's book. It's a very long process. It's very much, can be exhausting. And Scott is super talented at what he does. He puts his heart and soul into it. And so he's like, man, I said I probably was going to take a break and not do this, but I've read some of your stuff. I had me sending him stuff. And if you want to do this, this is what I'll need from you. And if you can agree to this, then we can go on this journey. And man, I am blessed he said that. And we agreed to work together. And then we were, I was sending him stuff. He was using his knowledge and crafting it, sending it back. And what I had before I met Scott was a collection of a bunch of events that came through my life. And I didn't have the knowledge to know how to format that, to put it into a book and to make it something that someone would read and enjoy. And he really used his knowledge to do that and put it together. And we massaged this thing together. And there were some disagreements in there. There was some agreements in there where there's some back and forth. But I think that's how something beautiful is made, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's examine fear again in relation to this book writing process, or really anything. Let's imagine someone listening along and they're really inspired by your story and they're feeling a call within to pursue that must in their heart. So maybe that must is to become a trainer, a coach, or maybe that must is to pursue their passion for martial arts and try to make a run at becoming a professional. Or maybe it's a must of publishing their book, that writing they've been doing, that they've been wanting to share, but fear has been holding them back. The fear and the shoulds from society, the shoulds from family, culture, parents, teachers. You should do the safe route. You should get a traditional job. You should play it safe. There's too much risk here, but there's a deep calling. A calling to share that book, to share that art, to share that whatever. But they're at that crossroads and they're stuck. What advice would you give that fellow hero?
That's great. Where were you when I was 18, man? I needed to talk to you, right? I still need to talk to you. I'm loving this conversation. So I think not everybody's fear by any means is in this box, but I think a lot of fear comes from the fear of failure, right? I've had to deal with that with this book. I've had to deal with it. Am I going to be good enough as a trainer to help people? And I really want to empower people to go, there is no such thing as failure. All we have is these experiences in life that are going to teach us something. And when we come through that, we're going to have new tools in our toolbox to help us down the road. So whether you write a book and it's successful or not, the process of you writing a book is amazing, and you're going to take tools from that. And how do you define successful? Just writing a book is successful, right? Writing a book is an amazing accomplishment only if 2 people read it or no one reads it. So release failure. Release that and go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I'm going to redefine what failure means, because the biggest things in my life that I one time defined as failure have been my greatest accomplishments and achievements, and have led me to this conversation right here. So release the failure, go, I'm going to go on this journey. I'm going to give it everything I have. I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to put the time in that's needed, because there's no magic wand, or at least if there is, I don't know it. I haven't found it myself. I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to surround myself with people that are going to lift me up, that are going to support me, that may not always agree with me, but I trust enough they're going to even tell me when I do things wrong or they disagree, that they love me enough to kind of keep me in check and to give me other points of view. And even though my feelings may get hurt now and again, I know that what they're telling me is out of love, and it may be for the greater good. I would say have faith and take a leap, because if we live this one life we have, there's no guarantees that I would have made it out of GBS, right? There's no guarantees that I'll make it out the door today after this conversation. We have one life. Look back at it and go, man, I have given it everything I have. I took some risks. I faced what I saw as fear in the face, and I took a step and I created something beautiful out of it. And I took a step and I asked that girl if she would want to dance with me. I took a step and said, I'm going to try to write that book. I took a step and I went to martial arts class. And maybe I never became a black belt, but me stepping through that door, through that threshold that was so scary, then gave me the courage to do something else, or gave someone else the courage to do something else. Richard writing his book, Worth Defending, gave me the courage to go, I have a story to tell. And if Richard is brave enough from doing it, and I'm inspired enough from his book, I'm going to face my fear in the face, and I'm going to take a leap of faith and do it. So let's take the focus and the spotlight off ourselves. Let's put it on what we can do to serve in this moment of fear. What is my facing fear in the face? What can it help beyond me? And I feel a lot of times, Derek, when we take that spotlight off of us and we put it on what we can do to help other people, that thing that seemed insurmountable, that thing that seemed like it was so scary, becomes so much smaller.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just really allowing space for those ripples of your action to create such positive change, but not being reliant on it, not doing it for that, doing it for yourself is what I hear that you've done.
Yeah, allow those ripples. That's beautiful. You know, this podcast, somebody might pick it up a year from now, right? And they may be in a place that they need a little bit of encouragement, or they need to see someone like yourself that has achieved so much, right? Or they might get a little nugget from something I'm saying. And that ripple, we don't know where it goes. Mm-hmm. And it could just be that one little bit of inspiration to help them in their journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's not a responsibility either. Our responsibility is just showing up in the now and doing our best.
Right.
Just allowing it to be what it needs to be for who it needs to be for.
Right. Because how would we even know?
Yeah. And it's okay.
Right. It's...
So to close every episode, I ask a final few questions, and we're at that point, and I'm going to ask you these questions. So you've given so much wisdom so far, and maybe you've already said the answer to this, but through it all, through the highs and lows, that is this life journey, that is this hero's journey, what has been the greatest life lesson that you've learned on your path that you feel called in this moment to share with everyone listening in?
Yeah, I would say, buddy, it's love. Love trumps everything. Love trumps fear. Love trumps hate. Love for yourself. Love for other people. And right in with those, in addition to that, you have to be caring. You have to be patient. We're in a world today that we want everything instantaneously, and we can get it, right? I can Google just about anything. There's no more Encyclopedia Britannica or any of that stuff, right? So we've come to be, and I'm not pointing fingers, and I'm guilty of this too. We can be impatient. You tailor love with empathy and caring and understanding and patience, you can tackle anything. I don't know of anything that trumps love. And we got to be kind to ourselves as we are to other people. So often we can really beat ourselves down and really hold ourselves. You need to hold yourself to a high standard. I'm a firm believer that we want to achieve things, you have to work, but give yourself a little gratitude too. Give yourself a little space. Give yourself the ability to grow.
Yeah, and a little underlying piece that I've heard through all your stories, and I don't know if you said this word, but I can see it, and that's forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for what needs to be forgiven and moving forward.
That's so true. Forgiveness is a huge thing. It took me a long time to forgive myself. I'm still working on that, right? But there is such freedom in that. And you need to be able to forgive yourself, and you need to forgive other people.
Mm-hmm.
Life is but a blip. You know, all this that we're doing is but a blip in the radar. And we need to enjoy it. We need to put beauty out there. We need to put love out there. And yeah, move forward with that.
It's a choice, and that's the greatest of our human freedoms, and it's the tool that we carry with us always.
It is. Yeah.
In 3 words, how would you describe the experience you are having on this earth? That doesn't need to be a phrase, but just 3 words that describe the experience you are having on this earth.
Honesty, growth, peaceful.
I like that. Honesty, growth, and peaceful. It's a nice place to be. It's a nice place to be, John.
Thank you, buddy.
My final question. We've played a lot with time. We've examined your past. We've enjoyed the present. And now we're going to dip on into the future. And we're going to be alongside an 85-year-old John Petrelli. Who is that 85-year-old man? Where are you? Who are you surrounded by? What is the legacy that you've left here in your time, in your 85 years? And what is the predominant feeling in your being?
Yeah, well, I've never thought of that in my life, but I'm just going to go with the first things come to my head. My family, I would love to be surrounded by my family. I have 2 young boys that are upstairs right now. They're 11 and 8 years old, and I just want them to go on their own journey while they're being great citizens, while they're being good stewards of this earth, while they're being caring, loving, helpful to other people. And I pray that they're by my side, my wife, and I want to be able to look back and see what John Petrelli has done to positively influence other people. All the material things that I've accumulated, I can't take them with me. I'm a big person of adventure. I love adventure. I love nature. I love experience. That lives forever. I want to be able to give people amazing experiences. I want to ride on the journey of other people's experiences as I'm with them. I want to be able to look back and say, I saw a lot of things. I saw a lot of beauty, and this place is a little bit better from some of the things that I took part of.
It sure is, and it already is. And in that 85 years, after accomplishing all that, making such a positive, powerful impact on so many, and you sit there surrounded by family and with a sense of pride. What is the feeling? What is the predominant feeling in your being, in your embodiment of?
I hope it's gratitude, gratefulness, and peace. To be at peace. Because when this physical body is gone, you know, I believe that there's a spiritual body that continues on. And, you know, when this outer shell, it's already been broken once or twice in my life and I couldn't use it anymore. but the body may end up dying off, but I want my spirit to live on and positively influence people.
Mhm. I want you to really feel into that spirit, that soul of that man, that elder. And I'm going to bring us back to the present moment, the right here and now. And that man, that entity, that spirit, he whispers a message to you. What does he send? What does he whisper and say to you, John?
Thank you.
And I thank you. I thank you for showing up so fully, wholly, and authentically to this conversation, to this connection. I feel really blessed to share this space and time with you. And I look forward to sharing this conversation with so many more, and may it serve to light a fire where fire needs to be lit.
Thank you, Derek. I feel blessed that you invited me on here. I had no expectations, and it's been amazing. Thank you so much, Derek. I really appreciate your talents and what you are doing. And to just be a small part of that, I'm very lucky.
Thank you so much.
You're
For
welcome.
people wanting to connect with you, John, they can find you online at johnpetrelli.com. You're also on Instagram at john.petrelli. Your book, Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer, the journey that changed my life and the lessons I've learned that can change yours, is available now on both Amazon and on Audible, which you've narrated yourself. And that's how I'm excited to consume this. I just got it this morning. So
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Derek. I appreciate it. It's been an amazing time.
yeah, to close every episode, we bring our fist in, a choice to step into the winning circle. Boom.
Yes, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have a great rest of your day, my friend.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.